Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show on News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 AM KFYO. It's Super Tuesday. Polls are open. You can get out and vote until 7 p.m. Remember, if you're in line at 7 p.m., you can still vote. We've got over 37 vote center locations here in Lubbock County alone for you to go and vote. Our next guest here on the program, we visited with him a couple of times before. It's always a pleasure to visit with the Executive Vice President of the Trump Organization, Eric Trump, here on the Chad Hasty Show. Eric, good morning. Welcome back to the show.
Chad, what's going on? It's great to be back on.
Yeah, it's great to have you on, and you've got to be feeling pretty good. It's Super Tuesday, of course. Your father, President Trump, he's just cruising along, and it seems like he's having a lot of fun watching what the Democrats are going through right now.
Yeah, it's an amazing feeling. It's so different than kind of what we know, right? I mean, we've only been through this process once before, and we were on the fighting end last time, and now it's kind of interesting watching these people kind of sitting back and watching these people tear each other apart, and that's exactly what the Democratic Party is doing. And it's also interesting when you look at the kind of the dichotomy of that party, right? You have one person who's a self-proclaimed socialist. He wants to tax every American 85%. The guy said that, Cuba and Venezuela were the models of, the United States should be the model for the United States government. I mean, it's really incredible. This is the guy who took his honeymoon, and I'm obviously talking about Bernie Sanders right now, but took his honeymoon to the USSR and is just about the most radical politician probably in this country. On the opposite side, you have Joe Biden, who is a guy who literally can't get through a sentence without totally stumbling. He said he was running for United States Senate yesterday. A couple of days ago, he said his son was, Attorney General of the United States, which clearly he was not. He didn't say Super Tuesday yesterday. He called it Super Thursday. I mean, the guy literally can't make it through a sentence with that. And by the way, those are some of the easier, misses that he's had. And it's amazing. So the question, Chad, would you rather run against Bernie, who's crazy as hell, or would you rather run against a guy who just is not fully there anymore? And I don't know, but it's certainly interesting to watch from this end versus what my father was going through last time, where he was battling and had to build an entire campaign up from the ground in a period of 3 or 4 months. We've got one of the best campaigns ever assembled, and we feel really good about where we are right now.
I obviously following your father on Twitter, also following you on Twitter, and you look back to 2016, Eric, and the establishment Republicans were not all falling in line and embracing your father from the very get-go. Now you see that the Democrat establishment not embracing Bernie Sanders. Do you see the Democrats trying to take this away from Bernie? I think your dad used the word coup the other day.
Oh, absolutely. Not only did they did in 2016. They're gonna absolutely do it again. I mean, I think the difference is, on the Republican side, back in 2016, you might have had disagreements on certain things, right? But generally, people wanted very strong economy. That's what Republicans always run on. They want low taxes, strong economy, secure borders, good education, very strong military. They want to take care of the vets. They want to address the opioid problems in this country. They want to address they wanted, the world to stop ripping them off, et cetera, right? So I think now there were differences. You had some rhino Republicans and other things in there, and they ended up weeding themselves out. If you look at the Democratic Party this time, it's actually very different. I mean, they stand for just totally different things. I mean, Bernie Sanders really stands for communism and socialism. I mean, he labeled himself a socialist last night. I mean, 2 days ago he was defending Castro, and he said that bread lines in some of these communist countries, socialist countries, weren't the worst things in the world. I mean, this is a guy who literally proposes Green New Deals and, X, Y, and Z and nationalism of certain industries, including the oil industry. I mean, he literally wants to nationalize the oil industry. Venezuela did that, and, what ended up happening? The largest company that they had in Venezuela became one of the most corrupt entities in the world, and people suffered because of it. And so you have that on one side. On the other side, you have a guy who's been in Washington for 50 years who totally messed up Obamacare, maybe the worst piece of legislation ever put into place, who had a son who was doing some really, really shady things off the side with Brisbane and other things. The guy, again, can't get through a sentence. He was a senator for 36 years. He was vice president for 8 years, but he blames all the problems of this nation on my father, who's been in office exactly 3.5 years. It's kind of interesting, right? So you do have a very kind of distinct economy between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. I don't think you saw that in 2016. You saw differences. My father thought the whole world was ripping off the United States, and no other Republican was really talking about that, right? I mean, that was a big part of his platform. He really wanted to take care of vets in this country, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't think you saw the stark difference that you do here today.
Yeah, absolutely. We're visiting with Eric Trump here on the Chad Hasty Show. I know you were in North Carolina last night for the president's rally. One thing that it is so cool to see about these rallies, and I was at the rally in Dallas, but just it seems like everywhere the momentum, the excitement for the president is just amped up, and it's just a raucous crowd. Is there any place that you've gone on these rallies that has kind of surprised you at just how excited people are about the president?
Well, Houston was incredible. I mean, we had a rally in Houston that was absolutely off the charts. It's interesting. I was thinking about it last night because Biden, Buttigieg, Mayor Pete, and Klobuchar and a couple of the others, who all sold their souls yesterday. Obviously they were promised a position. That's why they dropped out 18 hours before. Super Tuesday.
That sounds like a quid pro quo.
It is. I mean, can you imagine fighting for something for 18 months, 20 hours a day, all over the place, and then 18 hours before Super Tuesday you drop out? What was promised to these people? Yeah. Anywho, yeah. I regret. He was in Dallas last night. Biden, right? All these people came out to endorse Biden because obviously they were all promised something, but he was in Dallas. We had friends there. He had 200 people that were there. There were reporters who, we know, and, he had 200, and it was all over Twitter. We had 200 people show up. I mean, I spoke at a Reagan Day dinner last week in Dallas, and I'm not a candidate. I have no political aspirations. I really want nothing to do with those people because I just dislike most politicians in general. I had 700 people show up for me last week in Dallas. So how could a guy who was running for president of the United States, who's being endorsed by 3 other candidates, have so little enthusiasm and so little momentum that he had 200-300 people at this big pivotal moment the day before Super Tuesday? My father's in Charlotte, North Carolina. The same day, he has 30,000 people show up for a rally. I mean, there's 10,000 people inside. There's at least 20,000 people outside. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. Here's a guy who's running on the other ticket who has 200 people show up in Dallas. I was there last week. I had 700 people show up, and I'm not on a ticket. I mean, it's actually really incredible. And that's the enthusiasm gap that they're going to have to try and figure out, because I don't think they have the momentum. I don't think they have the enthusiasm. I think generally people find them fairly boring and unimpressive. And it's got to worry them a little bit, Chad. It's got to worry them.
Yeah. Eric, before I let you go, do you want to make any predictions tonight? Who do you think? How do you think Bernie does? How do you think Joe Biden does? And finally, do you think this thing for the Democrats, while y'all are kind of sitting back and watching and doing a little smirking, you think this is heading towards a brokered convention?
It very well could be. I think Mini Mike is out of it. I mean, the guy just can't connect with Americans. I think it will come down to to Bernie or Joe. It's going to be interesting to see how hard the Democratic Party fights to try and take away from Bernie. Bernie has so much more momentum and enthusiasm than Joe does, right? I mean, just look at the difference between their rallies. It's not even close, but they have the entire apparatus. No different than my father had a lot of the apparatus working against him. Bernie had the entire Democratic apparatus working against him. So he's more passionate. He believes in what he says, for all his craziness. But they're going to do everything they can. The Democratic Party is going to do everything they can to take it away from Bernie. And, it could be interesting to watch tonight. I'm really curious to see how it all shakes out.
Yep. We're with you on that one. Eric Trump, appreciate your time today, and we'll visit with you hopefully in the future.
Can't wait.
That's Eric Trump. Thank you. That's Eric Trump here on the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO.